Wipeout Sequence 1, Wipeout Sequence 2 complete. Boom, as Q would say, as Cobra's last two posts clearly confirm the last vestiges of darkness almost gone from below the ground and above the ground. The lockdown, is that all the cabal has left? A full breakdown of Cobra's and FM 144's latest post and what it all means to us, and so much more on a very big show of Ground Crew Command Radio today, folks. You're going to love this one. We're back. This is the Unknown Light Warrior on Ground Crew Command Radio. You're certainly at the right time and space here, folks. There's no two ways about that, because there's been a sudden flood of intel, primarily because of a sudden dramatic forward movement with the planetary liberation process. Certain critical major milestones have been achieved, and so we've got far less to go in terms of full and complete planetary liberation and galactic family reunion. Of course, to make it all happen so much sooner, we're going to do it again. Huge 144K mass meditations, a big momentous event this coming Halloween, October 31st, where the Dark Ones, both physical and non-physical, will be hoping and praying and begging and trying on their knees at this point. And we're still going to continue to stand between them and humanity, saying no. So, as the title for this week's episode says, lots of intel and briefing on Ground Crew Command with the grand mustering of light forces for the 31st of October. And that's the primary focus for this week's huge show. You know, it's a case of, you know, I can't stress enough how important it is. The participation rates are very high for the 144K mass meditations. There are other mass meditation groups doing their usual 15-minute morning meditation, and good on them for that. Another mass meditation group involving Justin Deschamps. Yeah, they're doing a mass meditation for about 20 minutes as part of their live conference with Sasha Stone and a few others on Sunday, so the day after Halloween. Good on them for that. But as always, the 144K are the ones on the front line doing a huge live and well-coordinated mass meditation globally on the day that appears to count the most, which is Halloween, the biggest Luciferian date of the entire year. And we're going to be there. The party poopers are going to be there, hence the name of the mass meditations. Anti-Halloween 144K meditations, one in the morning, one at night, where we will warmly greet them with a lightning bolt to the chest. And, you know, I can, and we all can more confidently and comfortably be a lot more cocky, I suppose, in this approach without necessarily being complacent and not doing the usual things like morning clearings and having protection because, I'll get into that with regards to the Chimera. Their head, when Cobra confirms that their queen, the Chimera queen, is gone, that you got to understand, just to make sure we're on the same page with one thing, that's the head honcho, okay, of the Chimera, gone. And I'll be getting into more details about that shortly. First of all, because of the possible fake cabal insurrection attempts that the cabal media will obviously, as it has throughout June and July, will pass off as, peaceful, grassroots, well-meaning protests, which was a part of it. But even that was concocted and created by the false information about what the police did and didn't do, which just blows the whole thing apart. Anyway, it's all fakery. Regardless, because of the fake cabal insurrection attempts, let alone mass cyber attacks from November 4 onwards, an emergency 144K mass meditation has been declared on and called for November 3rd, Election Day, to shut down the mass chaos the cabal will attempt to cause because of its election loss, which most people know about that even now. Even a lot of the unconscious are predicting a white hat victory. Now, usually, and here's why, usually the day prior to doing something in the physical, a false flag typically, is when they do the black magic ritual for it. All right? So they're going to go for broke on the physical from November 4th onwards. The day prior is when they do typically the black magic ritual to support that, specifically for that, for whatever physical action they take on the physical plane. Now, at least half of you will know that because you've been at this for years. And to that effect, those of you who... So we'll be doing a huge mass meditation on November 3rd as well, and 2 on October 31st, our 2 anti-Halloween mass meditations. The details are in the email and article for this show. And to that effect, those of you who did donate or buy a 144K product, you have greatly helped promote these 2, well, now 3 crucial 144K mass meditations, and I can't thank you enough for that. And I'm pretty sure I'm speaking on behalf of Gaia as well. You are being held in very high esteem. And I will get into more details of what happened this Monday, the 26th of October, that I, to a degree, I still can't really tell everything. Because obviously we're not alone. But I can tell you more. Only briefly mentioned, that I could only briefly mention in the previous email to you, with the further triangulation, or should I say as a result of the further triangulation, in other words, confirmation from the other source, which is primarily Cobra, that triangulation has been basically complete. So I can tell you more since it's been more confirmed. And as I mentioned in the previous email, not only did the winds start howling Monday night after this energy work, indicating a huge energetic equilibrium shift on the physical, on the non-physical plane. But again, as I announced in the first, few seconds of this show, here's what Cobra also posted the very following morning, which is Wipeout Sequence 1, Wipeout Sequence 2 complete. As George Norris used to say, there's no coincidence. And before I get into more of the details of that, there's a lot to get through, so I'm going to jump straight into it. I'm going to begin with a fresh look and perspective on the planetary initiation process of 2020. All right, big initiation process that we're going through of 2020, hence why it's been so hard. And to get you motivated, to feel more driven, even if you're tired and exhausted, like what I was feeling yesterday, and walk away bolstered, re-energized, and confident. Now, it's really important to be fully aware that we're going through the tightest or narrowest part of the 2020 planetary initiation process. And you've probably come across the analogy of a baby pushing its way through the tightest part of the birth canal, or the butterfly struggling against the last end of its cocoon. Pick your analogy. Hence why I constantly stress over and over again the importance of making your 3D life as comfortable as possible, adopting a better mindset. That's important. Shutting down any kind of pain through internal work that actually works, by the way, and etc. And December 21 is when we'll be completed with this planetary initiation period. Now, will it be easier by then or after then? The short answer is yes, but not if you haven't been doing the right things for yourself, both in a 3D practical sense, such as, obviously things like eating right, eating organic, having a smart meter guard over your smart meter, practical career steps, etc. And, of course, the deep enough internal sense, which is things like soul fragment retrieval, okay, at a minimum. If you ain't doing those two things, covering those two areas, either now or after December 21st, and you choose to just wait to be saved, yes, it will continue to be hard, and probably get harder. You really do have the power within your hands, which dovetails into, and all the resources are there, by the way, provided by 144K or Ground Crew Command to help make things easier. Okay, really is there for the taking. So the practical 3D things, to do things for your 3D life, but also the deep internal stuff, such as a soul fragment retrieval at a minimum. That's always central to healing. And if you ain't doing those two things, or covering those two areas, either now or after the December 21st, and you choose to just wait to be saved, like so many starseeds are, yes, it will continue to be hard and will only get harder. Again, the resources, the support are there. That's the whole point of 144K and Ground Crew Command. It's not just for the sake of coordinating mass meditations. We are much more than that. We are an army. What does an army have? It has a medical staff. It has heavy artillery and air support backup. It has logistical support. It has an engineering core to make things practical and make things work, etc. In a non-physical, somewhat metaphorical sense, well, not really, we're the same thing, with the same level of legitimacy. Now, the critical mindset approach of how to see events that'll unfold in October-November period, and this is just as important as the intel that's coming up, folks. Don't waste your time just waiting and hanging out for the intel. Yes, it is good news, but it's not necessarily what's going to get you free. Being better, as Jim Rowan used to say, don't wish that your job was easier, wish that you were better. You'll definitely want to pick that one up and really run with it. And this is, again, what I'm getting into. So mindset approach to make things much easier, and why this is so liberating, by also understanding the game as well that we are here to master. So there's two aspects to this point. Now, it's important to see all this for what it is, especially these few months that we're in, let alone the whole 2020 planetary initiation process. It is a reorganization into something new and unfamiliar at all internal and external levels. All right? And this always causes fear, at least for the current incarnational false identity or false persona, that's for sure. Only because it's different and unfamiliar. And that might sound crazy, well, because it is in one way, but it's true. It's the psychology around fear that's half the issue, actually, not even darkness. There's this ex-Navy SEAL that I'm a big fan of. His name is weird name, Jocko Willink. Okay, he's on YouTube, Jocko Willink. Great guy. I'm a big fan of him, partly because his appearance is so much of an Arcturian stereotype. It's kind of funny with the heavy-set brow ridge and the jawline. Anyway, and he did one of those short story little videos that they have on YouTube these days, and he said he read out a quote from a World War II veteran, and he said something, and I'm paraphrasing here: all pain and struggle is psychological until death. Okay. Or was it all fear? That's psychological until death. And, of course, if you're not feeling well or out of sorts, certainly do something about it. But I'm talking about in the context of the overall journey that we're here, in the middle of, in the center of, all the action. Anyway, so the anything different and unfamiliar causes fear. What's another way to put it is society itself is reorganizing itself. Okay. This is society reorganizing itself. Its institutions reorganizing themselves, our internal minds and genetics reorganizing themselves, everything reorganizing. Now, anything that refuses to move causes blocks. Blocks cause tensions or pain, mostly because the underlying energetics behind a block hasn't been cleared. The 144K focuses on that thing, clears it, and lo and behold, the same day or next day, the weather changes, the winds often start blowing, and there's great news in the alt media that comes out. Gee, what a surprise. This happens internally and externally. And that's the game that we're here to master. Just seeing that for what it is, in a detached, neutral way, without the labels, without the judgments, is the perspective and understanding and mindset on how to handle, therefore get through all this. And, and be the professional starseed that you're here to be. And that's the culture we have here at 144K headquarters of Ground Crew Command. There's always the bad day at the office. There's always the good day at the office. You get through both of them. You may want to re-listen to this last little bit of segment. All right. It really is that simple. I'll just briefly see if I can abbreviate it and repeat it one last time. What's happening is the world, society, energetics, and your internal self, both physical and non-physical, reorganizing itself. Anything that refuses to move, both externally and internally, causes blocks. Blocks cause tension or pain or fear or anxiety, mostly because it hasn't been cleared yet energetically. The 144K clears it energetically, and lo and behold, the next day the weather changes, the winds start blowing, and great news comes out from the alt media. That's the game. That's all. That's how you see it. That's just the fact of the matter. That's how it is. Now, yes, it does get hard if you're not using robust enough or high enough levels of light or energetic backing. That, for most of us, was missing in the past. That's different now. Okay, again, 144K resources are there. Adopt this mindset, use the resources so that you don't have to go through hell. It doesn't have to be this hard. It really doesn't, unless there's a block that we're not clearing internally as the 144K, or that you're not clearing internally. So really big deal to adopt that mindset and use what's in front of you. At the bottom of every email, there's always those resources from 144K HQ. Now let's move on to the full breakdown of Cobra's and FM 144's latest exciting posts. And of course, just as importantly, if not more importantly, what it means to us. As in, okay, what do we do now? How do we handle this? How do we make the most of this in moving forward as surface starseeds in order to accelerate liberation? Accelerate, accelerate, and accelerate, and don't stop accelerating, because the garbage is enough. Enough is enough. And of course, this will also provide some more details about Monday's energy work I've been talking about. So I will read out parts of Cobra's post because, a lot of people are all over it. Again, many are sort of missing the critical read between the lines kind of points and the wider ramifications, which is just as important as the rote intellectual information itself. So this is only yesterday, for those of you who may not know about this. Final Battle Update Part 2. And Part 1 was crazy enough in the positive sense. So, Galactic Confederation and Resistance Forces have managed to erase the Draco fleet and the Illuminati breakaway complex. And that is cause to celebrate momentarily, big time. The only Dracos remaining now are those physical and non-physical Dracos who are directly employed as servants to the Chimera. In other words, the Chimera directly control them. They're in direct communication with them. And the naturalized Dracos, who mainly came to planet Earth more than 25,000 years ago, entered the incarnation cycle in humanoid bodies and are now incarnated as politicians, bankers, lawyers, and other members of the surface Illuminati cabal. And of course, in the past, these guys were the Attila the Huns, the Genghis Khans, Edward the Longshanks, and we can go on with all sorts of charming characters that would incarnate mostly in men's bodies and would rape and pillage and torture, and we can go on. All right. For the most part, there was a lot of really damaged actual men that did that as well. Don't get me wrong. They were run by darkness, or peer pressured and so forth. But anyway, it's mostly these guys that did the most heinous things against women and children. And of course, other men, male light warriors. So it continues. A very small number of naturalized Dracos also came to planet Earth in 1996 to 1999 time frame as they entered humanoid clone bodies in underground bases and then entered the surface Illuminati cabal as lookalikes and doubles of many politicians, and I would imagine other corporate and black ops senior level types, and they are still part of the surface Illuminati cabal. Okay. Now, with the IBC, the Illuminati Breakaway Complex gone, and boy, that's phenomenal news. The only cabal, because they were quite powerful, okay, their dark fleet, the ships and the weapons they had were rather nasty. And there was a whole civilization of them, okay. With them gone, the only cabal network still remaining is the surface cabal network. Surface cabal network will be properly addressed only after the Chimera threat is significantly diminished. Okay, so for anyone here who's been in the military, you'll be not too surprised by that. You can't start putting most of your focus on the charming characters on the surface when the very powerful, although diminishing Chimera are still at large. It's just too dicey, precarious to do it that way. He continues, the main problem now remaining is the Chimera with their advanced exotic military technologies. That's the main problem remaining, especially quantum superposition topple bombs. Okay, so just for those of you who may not be clear about this, I just got 222. Fantastic. The superposition simply means vibrating at other phases or frequencies, if you will, within a given plane of existence. So they got toplet bombs. They are not plasma toplet bombs. They are just toplet bombs. Okay. The light forces are continuing with the operations, now focusing on the removal of the Chimera fleet in medium Earth orbit and low Earth orbit. In other words, higher or more outer Earth orbit, that's closer to lunar orbit, that means that it's cleared. And clearing of the Chimera underground bases. So they're continuing and really focusing on that now. With the completion of the removal of the Illuminati Breakaway Complex and the Draco Complex and fleets, it would make sense and it's totally reasonable to believe that this will go a lot faster now. In underground bases, the light forces are using Mjolnir quantum cannons and sonic weapons to remove as many physical Chimera spiders as possible. Some of those spiders are huge, measuring up to 10 meters in diameter, and I can vouch for that. There are huge spider nests in Chimera underground bases, and altogether they form a spider web, a negative ley line construct, which is the antithesis of the flower of life ley line grid on the surface. Hence the importance of doing that 10-minute exercise that I sent quite some time ago with visual aids. Okay, really big deal. And obviously, Cobra is the one that initiated the visualization of the flower of life for 5 to 10 minutes. That's all. 5 minutes each morning. That's it. To help keep that intact so that the Chimera's garbage doesn't sort of poke holes in it. Okay. You can find that 10-minute exercise that I sent months ago now in the search box at returntoyourtruth.com. I think it's titled Do This 10 Minutes a Day. And you can also search in the text box of this show. Although many of these spiders are being removed by the light forces, the Chimera replenish their nests with fresher spiders, which are materialized from quantum superposition state with advanced manifestation chambers. Now, this is the part that gets interesting because I saw something similar at the end of the October 16th 144K mass meditation that I decided not to publicize because I wasn't sure how people would react to it, okay? But now I can, since Cobra has. So I'm going to get into that now, but let me just finish this paragraph. As soon as the quantum reservoir, in other words, all these, what he calls manifestation chambers of the Chimera spiders will be gone, the light forces will be able to clear Chimera underground bases completely. Okay, so at the end of the last 144K mass meditation, what Cobra calls, and this is where psychic feed can always differ slightly between psychics or intuitives. So Cobra calls them quantum superposition state advanced manifestation chambers. What I saw was tiny little bubbles, in those superposition states. Basically, again, superposition simply means out of phase with a given frequency or the visual physical frequency. So vibrating at a different phase or different frequencies where you can't see it. And, there's lots of frequencies to hide within. So he saw them as manifestation chambers. What I saw at the end of our last mass meditation was bubbles, temporal bubbles, or manifestation chambers if you prefer. But inside, you could say that these spiders manifest out of these little chambers or bubbles, as I call them, or temporal bubbles, as Corey Good calls them. Really what they were was the Chimera spiders. They were kind of like little ready-to-go clones, ready to be animated. And what happens is when a given Chimera spider gets killed, ended by the light forces or by our mass meditations, in a split second before it happens, actually, it may not happen with our mass meditations. With our mass meditations, we're talking about a different deal here. They may actually get ended. But anyway, just before a Chimera spider gets killed, its essence or soul or consciousness, being, whatever you want to call it, in that split second that it dies or begins to die, it gets transferred into one of these temporal bubbles, what Cobra calls manifestation chambers. And inside that temporal bubble is, a kind of like a cloned body, a cloned version of itself. It gets transferred into there. It gets animated, activated, and comes out of the temporal bubble or manifestation chamber, if you prefer. That's what I saw, and started to focus on them, clearing them with the time and energy that I had left, because this was just after the completion or official completion of our 144K meditation on October the 16th. So that's interesting. Very, very interesting. It just means we've got a bit more to go. Again, with enough of us participating on October 31st, we'll be able to clear and also, clear directly ourselves, but also light forces will be able to clear a lot more faster all these temporal bubbles that these cloned spider bodies are hiding in, okay? Or manifestation chambers, whatever you want to call them. All right. Hence the beyond critical need for higher participation rates. And with regards to this Monday's energetic event that the team's done, not me, I'm just an innocent bystander, I was just watching. Again, all of this seemingly the knockout blow of the Chimera seems to have occurred based on Cobra's intel. That's basically confirmed it all. All right. It's a knockout blow that appears to have occurred on Monday. And obviously, the Chimera are in the process of falling down onto the canvas. Now, let me continue. Now they are focusing on removal of the key Chimera spiders, which form the backbone of the matrix system in quarantine Earth. So this is interesting. We all thought, the AI or Agent Smith types or the Argons or blah, 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 were the ones at the top of the hierarchy of the matrix. It turns out to be the Chimera themselves at the top of the matrix system. Really interesting. In other words, we're at the end, folks. They have already managed to remove the Spider Queen, who was responsible for destruction, and I was really happy to hear this. As, I guess, divine masculine type soul that couldn't stop this. And boy, I had to do some soul fragment retrieval in that one, let me tell you. That was responsible for the destruction of goddess temples in Atlantis and destruction of the goddess mysteries in the first and second Archon invasion. So the Archons invaded, the Chimera Queen jumped on the opportunity that opened. She was the force behind the Inquisition and more recently the force behind global child abuse networks, using Mothers of Darkness to do the dirty work. And for those of you who have been getting onto the homepage of BitChute, which is sort of an alternative to YouTube, you may have seen a picture of Madonna from back in the 80s, mid-80s, but with her back towards the camera. She's wearing a leather jacket, and she literally got an image of a pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the back of her leather jacket. So again, if you're a cabal member, your career, whether you have talent or whether you haven't got talent, miraculously takes off. What a surprise! Anyway, using Mothers of Darkness to do the dirty work. All right, and then he's got that steamit.com /monarch link. With the Spider Queen gone, the child abuse networks on the surface will now slowly begin to disintegrate as they are exposed to the surface population. Obviously, that's already been happening a lot. But so I would add or clarify that we will see a further acceleration and amplification of the exposure and disintegration of the child abuse networks. Many light workers and light warriors, especially those who hold the goddess energy, were directly or indirectly traumatized by the Spider Queen in many incarnations. And those traumas will now begin to heal. On top of that, I would advise you do, in particular, soul fragment retrieval. That really gets to the point of it, to the core of it, in a much more effective way, to amplify your healing and liberation and accelerate it. Let's continue. Etheric spider poison, which she and other Chimera spiders were emanating and using in their attacks, so they just emanated just by them being around you or near you, let alone in your field, and using in their attacks, and was destroying many soulmate relationships on the surface, and this will now begin to dissipate and clear. So if you meet or come across your soulmate or twin flame, you've got a much higher chance of being able to maintain that relationship. because they would attack those like you wouldn't believe. It was ridiculous. Exposure of child abuse networks is now going mainstream as Taiwanese Dragon and other sources are exposing Hunter Biden and his involvement in those networks. Now, this is corroborated by intel that Fulford has been getting from his sources that the Taiwanese Dragon, so positive Dragon families, were exposing this partly to stop the cabal through their control of Chinese elements of the Chinese deep state to invade Taiwan, to therefore cause trigger World War III, either just before or just after the election, because they know they haven't lost anyway, that they've lost it anyway. And I'll be getting more into that pretty soon. Taiwanese Dragons decided to go public with Hunter Biden's story and intel about Chinese counterintelligence operations against the United States as a countermeasure against mainland Chinese threats to attack Taiwan. Dragon sources have repeatedly said that they will organise full disclosure of mainland Chinese secret space program in the event of any aggression towards Taiwanese national sovereignty. So, same old thing, threats, counter threats, moves, counter moves. Ending all that endless garbage is breaking the energetic back of darkness. That's where the 144K comes in. It continues. As the day of the US elections draws near, there are important astrological configurations taking place. Okay, so first we've got Jupiter, Saturn, synod or synod, heliocentric conjunction on November 2nd. All right, big deal. I would still say Halloween will still be a bigger influence. Let's allow that Jupiter-Saturn synod conjunction play out because there's nothing particularly negative about it. It's not like what we've been dealing with, Mars squaring Pluto, Mars squaring Saturn, all about structures and so forth. So kudos to us, we've taken care of those hairy moments. And that's on November 2nd. Of course, like I said, we'll be doing our mass meditation on November 3rd. God knows they'll be doing their rituals on that day. Next, we got Jupiter-Saturn synod. Will effectively trigger the age of Aquarius for all solar system beyond lunar orbit. Well, that gives us an idea. Why not have the age of Aquarius go all the way to within lunar orbit? I'll leave that at that. At that moment, a massive operation of the Ashtar Command will commence and it will require a complete reorganization of all Ashtar Command fleet beyond lunar orbit. All right, so theoretically at least, we're being told that this is primarily going to have a far bigger impact beyond lunar orbit, and I'll leave that at that for now. It is interesting to note that the following mass meditation starts only 38 minutes after exact Jupiter-Saturn synod. And with a link to Justin Deschamps' stillnessinthestorm.com, they're having even though it's a day prior, it's still a good idea to have it on this Jupiter-Saturn synod. And they're calling it Protect the Vote, Mass Synchronized Meditation and Prayer for a Fair Election. So good on them for doing that. We'll be doing a somewhat similar meditation on the day of the election. Now, the second aspect is Mercury turning direct on November 3. Again, this is where we step in. At 5:50 p.m. UTC, so that'll be in the morning, roughly around 9 p.m. Eastern. Get ready, folks. I'm giving you the heads up here. This aspect will ease the tension and uncertainty somewhat. Okay, so that's, again, another reason for doing the 144K mass meditation on November 3rd, it will be riding that wave to really see things through. Okay, the third aspect, but again, we've got to shut down the black magic ritual garbage they'll be undoubtedly doing on November 3rd. The third aspect is the completion of a certain cycle on November 3rd, and he goes on to say nothing more can be said about that. Okay, so that certain cycle that'll end on November 3rd, he has to remain tight-lipped about it. I'm sure there's a very good reason for that. All right, so second wave lockdowns are now being implemented in many countries, and it is still very important for as many people as possible to join our daily anti-lockdown meditation. All right, so again, there's a link to welovemassmeditation.com where you can join what's it called here? Meditation to counteract engineered second wave lockdowns daily at 9:30 p.m. UTC. That's around about midday throughout most of the US. And just to finish up here, the lockdown concept was engineered by Chinese cabal members in tandem with Tedros Adhanom. All right, now I haven't had a chance to look into that one. He has a link to that. What's behind knowing it's the cabal is enough. You don't necessarily always have to know all the details. Now, to control the surface population with COVID apps. Apparently there's apps, that they're releasing apparently that trace. It's funded by the Rockefeller Clinton Foundations, no surprise there, and it tracks movement apparently, which I'm a little surprised about because they can track your movements by the phone anyway unless they've lost that ability and it's fully controlled by the NSA. In other words, the White Hats. And this is going too far, and we need to correct the planetary timeline back into the optimal ascension timeline. Again, folks, that's our focus. 2 days from now, on October the 31st, and November 3rd for that matter. Really take that on board. Really take that seriously. Therefore, we will be doing a timeline correction mass meditation at the moment of triple Jupiter-Pluto Pallas conjunction on November 11th at 11:11 Central European Time. All right. Equals to 10:11 in the morning, in other words, UTC. So that's going to be like 1 a.m. or something in the US. So, but you'll have time to adjust your sleeping cycle and get rest and get your coffee ready. The moment of this meditation will have Paris ascendant conjuncting the galactic center, and Paris goddess vortex will be activated to its next level, which is great news. If you live in France, you can join the Paris Sisterhood of the Rose group there, and there's a Facebook group, and of course a Sisterhood of the Rose group in Versailles. There's a Facebook group for that. The links are on Cobra's website, and then it goes into the instructions for this 11:11 mass meditation. Okay, and yeah, we've certainly got time to prepare for that one. And that breaks down Cobra's latest and exciting post that basically corroborates, clarifies, and confirms what I've been, shall we say, experiencing. So huge, folks, huge. I'm going to get into FM 144's latest exciting post as well shortly. But I want to quickly move on to the next point for a really important reason, and that is the god-awful tension that's charged by fear that many of us have been feeling, especially yesterday. Is this ours or the cabals that we're empathically feeling again? Obviously, that question answers itself deliberately. So this has happened before. Back in January last year, 2019, where I was not just feeling a very, very nasty fear, but a traumatized sense of complete and utter entrapment. Entrapment, that compression, claustrophobic kind of feeling. I was really starting to feel that in a big way, and it turns out others were as well, back in January 2019. And it was a very visceral, infinite sense of entrapment in hell, basically. Anyway, I did a clearing with the teams on myself, and it got better. And straight after that clearing on myself, right, lo and behold, about 3 or 4 days later, Cobra posts information that revealed that the cabal did their usual AI computation on their chances of survival and not even success at that point, and it had come to zero. All right, they now had a 0% chance of surviving, let alone winning, and a 100% chance of losing with a capital L. And they lost it, specifically feeling that infinite sense of entrapment, all right, permanency to it. That was a noticeable, sense to that feeling. A few of us were feeling. And so we felt that emphatically, because the irony is we're more connected with them in certain ways than we are with the 3D unconscious majority. So, to clarify, the truth is we are more connected with them than we are with our own 3D families. That's the truth of the matter. Okay, in all but genetically, I guess. So that's the primary source of this god-awful fear-charged tension. It's theirs, not ours. Okay? And, FM 144, not just Q, not just Cobra, have also been saying that their panic just keeps on increasing. We're going to feel that. These guys live in their mansions in critical grid points. We're going to feel it. That's another aspect or method of how we're connected to them, through the grids. Of course, if you're not doing your really vertical, deep level soul fragment type internal work on yourself at least once a week, all this will be and is greatly amplified. I'm stressing that again. Damn good reason. All right. Why the lockdown was consensual by the White House or Earth Alliance, and therefore the high dimensionals for that matter, and what they're waiting for in order to easily end it. So in a recent interview with Robert David Steele, he simply explained that all of this garbage with the lockdown and the riots and the looting wasn't just for the sake of exposure of their network, to know who to arrest. It was also, and to actually charge the right people with sedition, which is what they're literally guilty of, because Antifa, BLM, they're literally working for and directly funded by foreign entities, for anyone who isn't familiar with the cabal network. Again, as always, with the usual extremely deliberate false benevolent pretense. Otherwise, they're not going to get very far. All right, so it wasn't just for the sake of exposure and knowing who to arrest. It was also allowed so that the unawakened majority, which is quickly becoming a minority now if it isn't already, can see for themselves what the cabal looks like. All right, what the cabal, aka establishment or deep state, is all about, which is simply destruction and chaos under the false pretense of justice. All right, that they have to apply that tactic, otherwise no one's going to buy it. All of you who follow Q posts know that the people have to be shown, not told, right? Telling people doesn't work. Now, what they're waiting for is the completion of the full destruction of the Draco, the Dark Fleet, the IBC, the Chimera, which is obviously almost there, to then go full force with the surface cabal. All right? They haven't gone full force yet with the surface cabal network. The Illuminati breakaway complex was a big thing, by the way, as I mentioned before. It really was. Just that alone, never mind the other groups. It was literally a civilization in its own right. Now, on top of all of that, as further developments, and to quote part of FM 144's latest post, which interestingly was this Monday, the 26th, when that energetic event I've been telling you about occurred. Quote, the aim of the cabal is to further panic the population with such news, meaning the lockdowns, so that the energy of the collective consciousness is kept as low as possible as the breakthrough approaches. All right, so it's sort of their, I guess, desperate countermeasure against the breakthrough that's approaching. All right. But this good news shows that energetic countermeasures are effective. And it's got a BBC link to an article about the state of Victoria, which has had the heaviest lockdown in the entire world, really, let alone Western Hemisphere. How they're loosening that. They're already going to be loosening that as of middle of next week. So it's more like what it is here in America. Meanwhile, in China, life seems to go on again too, with, ironically, a New York Times article titled China Coronavirus Normal Life, or Returning Back to Normal Life. And to FM 144's credit, he's promoting World Doctors Alliance. Quote, an alliance of doctors from all over the world has formed with the aim of ending all lockdowns and related damaging measures and to reestablish universal health determinants of psychological and physical well-being for all humanity. All right. And they have a petition going that, you're encouraged to go sign as a public member. It's worlddoctorsalliance.com. And he continues, the current volatile events in some parts of the world are only happening as the Galactic Confederation is moving closer and closer to Earth. All right. So really the volatility, the tension is partly or primarily and directly a result of the Galactic Confederation moving closer to the surface. And it's important to be aware that if you're if just being in an area of space in amongst a fleet of Galactic Confederation ships, believe me, the frequency is pretty high just being in that area of the fleet. And with them, as they keep on punching downwards through at this point, the Chimera fleet, and get closer and closer to the surface, with them comes light. With them and through them comes more light. They themselves vibrate at a really high frequency. And when there's millions of these guys in their ships and they're coming closer and closer, it's like it by default pushes up the frequencies down here on the surface. And anything institution, individual, whatever, not of the highest good, it starts to come undone. Or if it's an individual or a negative group, they start to lose it just by the presence of the Galactic Confederation. Of course, you'll start any starseed will start to lose it as well if they don't do their internal work, because there's unresolved stuff that needs to go. Okay, so moving on. Really important in truly understanding and appreciating our symbiotic relationship with the white hats and off-world positive forces, generally referred to as Galactic Confederation and Ashtar Command, that'll motivate you even more, just when you thought you'd had enough. All right? We've certainly been having those days more and more in recent months. So think of this symbiotic relationship as a sacred trinity, right? A triangle. You have the triangle, the trinity that we all know. You have the off-world forces, commonly referred to as ETs and EDs, extra dimensionals, that are doing a lot of the dirty work, and they're at the bottom end of this triangle, this trinity. Then you have the white hats, all right, or Earth Alliance and SSP, both low level and higher level SSP. All right, they do a lot of the other dirty work as well. A lot of them are underground at this point. Obviously the white hats or Earth Alliance are on the surface. The SSP levels, they're sublunar space. Now, they're on the other bottom end of this sacred trinity. Now, at the top of the trinity, or the triangle, you have the gods and goddesses. The gods, who descended down into hell, basically, the lowest densities, in order to project their consciousness from these deep and dark densities into the non-physical planes and realms, which is 99% of all of reality, to transmute en masse. All right, because the off-world groups, the white hats, the high dimensionals or extra dimensionals, believe me, they couldn't do it on their own. It's really important to be clear about that. Despite their power, okay? Now, doing this from within, or what these gods at the top of this trinity, doing that consciousness projection from within, is kind of like, or within the deep density and matrix, is kind of like a form of infiltration. And it turns out to work far better to clear and end darkness. You can transmit a lot more if you do this from the physical. Those of you who've been at this for a long time have come across the reference to this planet as the planet of the gods. There's a reason for that. Again, the current false incarnational persona and identity, false identity in this physical vessel that's listening to my voice right now, although it can probably intellectually get and understand what I'm saying, again, rest assured it's a different experience. Actually being it, actually feeling it at a visceral level, that's different altogether. And to that effect, I can say that as my DNA activation and internal work, as that progresses with the DNA codes I promoted a few weeks ago, I do occasionally get glimpses, and this sort of thing is happening more and more, glimpses and a very visceral sense, really feeling it at the physical level, of all my other soul fragments in alternate and parallel timelines and universes. One having this experience, the other having that experience, and seeing it from the higher level and perspective of my soul. And let me tell you, it's trippy, especially at the beginning. It's quite an adjustment. But again, that makes it easy for me at the incarnational level, as Jim, to really accept and experience and feel viscerally that we are gods in the literal sense. Of course, many of us are still fighting through programming, beliefs, internal stuff, soul wounding, still yet to be cleared. That's what the soul fragment retrieval audio is for. That's what the ICB is for. The programming, that's what the dehypnosis audio is for. It's all there, okay, at the bottom of each email that I send you. And, if you persist with these resources, and of course the DNA codes, if you persist with those resources for a few months, 6 months, 12 months, I'm coming close to 12 months now with the DNA codes, that's the kind of thing that starts to happen. It just happens. You start seeing things in your mind's eye, getting a bird's eye view from your soul, and then sometimes your oversoul perspective. Really trippy in a awesomely cool way, of course. All right. You are God, and for the really powerful, albeit more pervasive, magnetic kind, you are Goddess. Okay. I understand that reminder is needed. Use your God power and Goddess power on October the 31st during the mass meditations. Rest, build your energies. So, FM 144 goes on to clarify something interesting, which is the next point, what the Pleiadians have pointed out to FM 144 as the sure sign of the beginning of the decline of the matrix itself. All right, meaning darkness as matrix. Really, every dimension, every world has its own set of rules with its simulations of their realities, meaning matrices, but the fake matrix, really. So, okay, here's what they've said according to FM 144, and FM 144 is probably hardly paraphrasing. He says, quote, the Pleiadians have pointed out that the chaos on the streets is a clear sign of the beginning of the decline of the matrix, and we are right in the middle of it. All right. So, yes, we're in the middle of the chaos, which is easily handled if you do your morning clearing for 10 minutes and have wearing your protection code. Yes, we are in the middle of the chaos. It doesn't mean that we have to experience the chaos. And we're also in the middle of this initial phase of the matrix being dismantled. And if you want to really move quickly into the middle phase of the matrix being dismantled, I would suggest you make sure you show up for the two mass meditations on October 31st on Halloween and November 3rd, let alone 11/11, that Cobra's called. And, of course, doing your internal work. All of that causes acceleration because you rise in timelines faster. That's what it simply means. So, really good stuff. That's confirmation from the Pleiadians themselves. Obviously, they're on the outside looking in, which means they can see the whole forest. Now, what needs to be achieved by December 21st by all starseeds and white hats to complete the planetary initiation? Notice how I didn't really mention all the off-world groups and extra-dimensionals. All right. There's a reason for that. So, the end, here's what we need to achieve by this December 21st. All right. The end of all negative, off-world, and breakaway civilizations, both physical and non-physical. All right, the completion of it. It's sort of there already, but not completed. The good news is we're ahead of schedule. Again, we all know now that Cobra has confirmed the Draco as an effective force is done. The Chimera, the IBC, Illuminati Breakaway Complex, done. The Chimera is all that's left. Now, there's plenty of non-physical negative entities on the non-physical planes. All right, but we know what to do with them. But really the real problem is the Chimera. And that's all that's left. Now, if the Chimera can be finished off by the US presidential elections, that would be ideal. And I'm going to leave that at that for you to intuit. So after all that's done, the White Hats in particular can finish off the surface cabal members and networks on the surface, which on the current timeline will happen in 2021. But if you and I raise the timeline on the 31st, Halloween, on the 3rd of November, on 11/11 of November, they might be able to wrap that up by the solstice and well before the solstice as well, and have a very Merry Christmas. And you veteran 144K members know full well that the 144K has developed quite the habit in raising timelines to bigger and better. Really, I'm putting this in your consciousness to have this in your consciousness, so your consciousness is pointing in the right direction, thinking the right way, seeing things the right way. That's energy. And having clarity on what to focus on for the most part. And clarity is power. Moving on to the next point, why you need to know what your particular role is based on who you are and the intrinsic gifts that stems from your true identity. Now, this is a simple, easy, fun exercise that we'll be doing to learn which category of Starseed you are, to know and to have a better idea and understanding of what to do when the moment arrives. To influence it, not necessarily decide it, okay? Sometimes we do all need to focus on the same thing. But again, the culture, at the top of the culture that we have here at 144K Ground Crew Command is know thyself. That's deliberate self-disclosure by those in the know through Hollywood, the Matrix movie, obviously, I'm referring to. So let's break down the categories that almost all of us fall under, right? Healers. If your primary strength, the way you're built, your purpose, what your soul is just here for and brilliant at, the way it's built, healers heal Gaia, okay? Goddesses. Bring in more goddess energy to govern this planet in that pervasive background kind of way. And also open vortexes and stuff like that. Light warrior. Light warriors be at the front line and kick butt, bust head. With certain style and panache, of course. I mean, we've got taste and standards here. Energy masters. Alter reality. Alter the matrix. Transmute en masse, especially high-level darkness. That's what you're here for. Of course, have backup. Use the highest level non-physicals that you connect with or can connect with. Commanders, make sure things are going in the right direction and that you motivate and empower all starseeds and back them up with the best resources. Okay? Grid workers, take control of the grids and keep clearing them and connect them to the higher dimensions. You know, the equivalent of connecting our physical DNA strands to our non-physical DNA strands and activating them and bringing more light through the grids. The last category here, technicians. Use transdimensional technology and sometimes dormant infrastructure, quite often set up by your galactic family, to clear energies, clear strongholds on certain planes, or maintain stability of the energies. Maybe ask for technology that alters or removes the matrix from your galactic family or guides. You're the technician. Okay, the systems builder. I know Syrians are particularly good at that. And there's a simple exercise to do, which I'll quickly run through now. Now, there's two ways to do testing. Muscle testing, which all of you will know. But you need to make sure you're detached from the answer and be properly hydrated for muscle testing to be reliable. So you can do muscle testing if you're good at it. What I also recommend is a form of testing that I learned from Toby Alexander. Some of you will know him. And it's simply putting your left hand, which is genetically designed to receive, and we give with the right hand. You put it flat with, fingers pointing straight but relaxed. Put it flat on your lap or on your desk, whatever. Fingers pointing ahead. And let's just quickly do it. Just announce or focus on your higher self and just say, higher self, connect with me now. This won't take long. And you can always do this later on. And you'll start to feel, typically you start to feel the tips of your fingertips first. Then you start to feel this energy move to your knuckles. You start to feel your knuckles and then to the palm of your hand. And it stops at your wrist. Okay? And then you just go through the questioning. Authentic higher self. What am I? In terms of my primary talent, strength, and purpose. Am I a healer, first and foremost? Because we all have one of the other abilities as kind of like a secondary ability that we're also good at, but not necessarily our strong suit. So you ask, am I a healer? Primarily to heal. And if you're in a man's body, you still want to ask this following question. Am I a goddess? Here to bring in goddess energy to govern this planet in that all-powerful, pervasive way. Now, with the answer, before I go any further, if you get a no answer, or if your higher self is telling you no, what you're going to feel is energy pushing against your fingertips. So pushing towards you, towards your upper torso, or against your hand from your fingertips. Okay? That's a no answer. And sometimes it can take a few seconds. If you get a yes answer, it'll be the opposite. You'll feel energy leaving your fingertips and coming, through your fingers and out of your fingertips in that direction. Although sometimes some people may only feel just a slight tingling at the fingertips. Okay? But you quite often feel energy leaving roughly from the wrist of your hand, from the wrist through your hand, through the fingertips and through the fingers and through the fingertips. That's a yes answer. And then you continue. Am I a light warrior? With my primary role to more directly deal with darkness and transmute that way. Right. Because healers and goddesses, commanders, grid workers, technicians don't necessarily, or most of the time, as a generalization, usually don't deal directly with darkness. Energy masters do, magician types, and light warriors. They're the two that normally deal directly with darkness. It's not to say that you can't. If you fall into any other categories, you can. It's a simple exercise on how to transmute, and it's certainly recommended you learn that. All right. Am I? And then you finish with the rest of the questions. Am I an energy master? or magician. It's basically the same thing. Am I a commander? Am I a grid worker? Am I primarily, I guess you'll want to use the word primarily, all right, because we all have secondary roles and strengths that have to be done as well, just not necessarily our strong suit or what we're truly brilliant at. And, am I a grid worker? Am I primarily a grid worker? Am I primarily a technician? All right. And, I feeling the no answer pushing against my fingertips. Speaking for myself, I feel that a lot easier than feeling a yes answer. So it's okay if you feel the yes answer really subtle. Again, if you're doing this for the first time, your left hand sensitivities, especially if you're not a sensitive or not a goddess or not, a part-time or full-time energy worker, it might take a few goes to start feeling it with your left hand, because both at the cellular level and at the body physical level, mind level, you might not have the reference points, but practice at it, because I found it more reliable than muscle testing. Muscle testing, you really have to be detached with the answer. Okay. Do that exercise, either as I speak or later on. It really helps, because the more you know yourself, your frequency goes higher, which means you jump in timelines to bigger and better. Now, yes, stuff, in unresolved internal stuff, tends to come out faster. Well, you do soul fragment retrieval type work and clear it. Okay? Don't take it sitting down. Take charge. Take control, because you can now. You really can. All right. Moving on. FM 144 has given further good news. Really interesting stuff here. Like I said, it's been a huge show here, folks, regarding that the off-world light forces are doing soul fragment retrievals themselves. Okay, this is interesting. For those of you who've been following Ground Crew Command for a while, you'll know or are using the ICB, the internal compression breakthrough audio, which is like 100 soul fragment or 1,000 soul fragment retrievals in one session, which is why it's so nuts in the positive sense. You'll know that soul fragment retrieval is central to internal healing. Now, because it still, and part of the reason why it's so powerful is that it still generally covers things like agreements and contracts, which, although that's more of a verbal thing or a mind subconscious thing when we get into those, or accidentally make them most of the time, soul fragment retrieval still, well, let me put it this way, agreements and contracts and vows and unconscious curses, blah, 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 they still send a soul fragment into a trauma or a negative event. All right. And a whole period, a whole incarnation can be a negative event as a result of contracts, agreements, and hooks and bindings and blah, blah, blah. But I will break down some of what FM 144 said, partly because his or her English isn't really their first language to this effect. And that is simply, let me see, FM 144 states, on the non-physical levels, the light forces are in the process of freeing twin flames that were separated by the dark ones and forced into fake partnerships with the negative side during countless incarnations. All right. Now, by negative side, it doesn't just mean incarnated dark beings. It also means intrinsically good beings that have massive gateways, massive soul gateways, or damage if you haven't done your homework on that, because darkness works through soul gateways just fine. All right, person doesn't necessarily have to be dark in the intrinsic sense. Anyway, and this will be a massive boost to the liberation. All right. And yes, that will be a huge boost because it helps with team building. It helps with partnerships as it relates to our role here on the surface. In addition, soul parts. All right. So what FM 144 calls soul parts, the more common term is soul fragments. Okay. Soul parts of many key light workers are being recovered. In addition, so this is in addition to that. All right. In addition to freeing twin flames, all right, that were separated and on some non-physical plane. In addition, soul parts from many key light workers, soul parts of many key light workers are being recovered, meaning seemingly based on this information on the physical plane, but on different time, space, you know, whether it's past or future or, you know, alternate timelines, etc. He seems to be indicating the physical plane, which the Dark Ones absorbed during the invasion of Atlantis to manifest, and also later on to manifest many incarnations of prosperity and success. Example for many Illuminati artists, like the Madonna example I just gave before, with her pyramid on her leather jacket. So before I go any further, I'll just break it down into more street level English speaking terms in the English speaking world. When he says which the Dark Ones absorbed during the invasion of Atlantis, absorbed means sort of running from the background and controlling things from the background in terms of those respective soul parts. You know, it's not necessarily absorbed in a literal sense. Absorbed in terms of control and manipulation, yes, but not absorbed into some thick, black, smoky thing, okay? Not in that sense. While the affected light workers only experience incarnations of struggle and destitution. Okay, so again, the Archons in particular, they had a big influence on which parents you can choose to incarnate through, and we pick the least of all those evils, and something happens during childhood, during the formative years, that causes damage. Through the damage, they can manipulate and control you. All right, that's what absorb. That's what it means by absorb. And they organize events, manipulation from the non-physical, so that our soul fragments, in other words, past lives, is another way to put it, you know, just go in a wrong direction or make the wrong decision or get tricked and misperceive things and have a crap life, basically, right? So these recovery missions are important, all right? So these guys, assumably from the past, many of our, beginning with key starseeds, they're recovering themselves in the physical. That's what he's saying, okay? That's what he's saying. And again, what this also means, it means that this very matrix is being wrapped up. This density is being, I wouldn't say destroyed or gotten rid of, more like transmuted, because light is coming here, is a better way to put it. It means the whole show is being wrapped up. If they're allowed and they have the higher authority needed to do something like that, it basically intervene directly to retrieve our soul fragments, in other words, ourselves in some crap situation in some past life that's affecting that's most relevant to our current life. This is a big deal. This is an unprecedented thing, and that's what, you know, if what it's saying is literal and true, is not mentioning, and I'm letting you know now, this is huge. So these recovery missions are important because as a starseed, for example, one can only leave this planet once the soul is complete again. Yep, that's one advantage. And the souls will be completed and united again, meaning all those soul fragments from primarily past lives, to a degree alternate and parallel timelines, when they're returned back to your soul, it'll greatly increase your ability to return to your soul and basically ascend, or whatever it is that you're here to do next. Okay, the ever-increasing influence of light forces and other factors are reasons why the Dark Ones are currently panicking more and more. Again, that panic that many of us are feeling, that society, unbeknownst to it, is feeling. The irony of the whole situation is that while trying to force all of humanity behind masks, they are completely unmasking themselves, and their actions will come back to them like a boomerang. That's true. They're just getting more and more exposed, despite the censorship. Okay, so this wraps up the important training, guidance, support, not just intel breakdown for this episode of Ground Crew Command Radio. We're going to take a very short musical break for 30 seconds, and I'll be right back, folks, with the exo and geopolitical news analysis. As a lot of things need clarifying and clearing up there, to clear up the confusion, so we can soldier forward with a lot of confidence that will drive you forward. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to your loving servant, the Unknown Light Warrior. This is Ground Crew Command Radio. You're listening to your loving servant, the Unknown Light Warrior, always here for you, at least as far as I can answer emails. As far as that's concerned, that's getting comical, that. By the way, I've ended up having to use another phone to call in because they've attacked the technical aspects of my phone, which didn't work at the beginning, and then the computer, which didn't work either, so I'm using another phone. I've got about 3 phones as backup, so take that, Mr. Cabal man. Exo and geopolitical news here, folks. Again, many have stopped following Benjamin Fulford. I can understand why. He doesn't always get it right, but many still do. So that's half the reason why I still use his intel, well, more his sources' intel, rather than his own personal opinion and perspective, which is quite often not very accurate, as a starting point. Okay, so let's get into it. The first important point that people are a little worried about, will the cabal with its elements, based in China, try to start a war before the elections or even after the election, now that the vote by mail fraud attempts isn't working too well, not going the way they want it. And what October 31st, the date of a mass meditation, and Halloween has got to do with this. And I'll quickly begin with a rather interesting quote from Mr. Fulford. I often quote his sources that he does paste verbatim onto his articles, but I rarely quote him himself. But this one's fairly accurate. The White Dragon Society will move swiftly to eliminate cabal members responsible in Shanghai Peking, meaning Beijing, New York, and DC, if necessary, to stop the plot. The Gnostic Illuminati, which is positive, by the way, part of the Earth Alliance, are also promising the use of targeted weapons against the leadership in these cities, so the stakes are high to avoid war. He continues with, in a sign, the threat to Washington, D.C. is being taken seriously. A special nuclear radiation detection helicopter has been flying over the city in a systematic search for a nuclear device. They are wasting their time because any attack is likely to use a kinetic device, such as one of those rods of God thing, or a beam from one of their satellites, although they can only do so much damage with that, although it can look like a bomb explosion. Now, first of all, I'll disagree that, the White Hats are wasting their time looking for a nuclear device, because you never know, okay? They really are going to the nth degree to make sure no false flag occurs. If one helicopter within the vast US military arsenal is all it takes to, have flying around and keep an eye on for any nuclear devices that might come into the city, well, that's not a huge expense, okay? Let it fly around DC, keeping an eye on that. They should be knowing that on every city in town. So I disagree with him on that one, but I understand what he means, that, he's not wrong in saying that it is more likely to be some sort of kinetic device from low Earth orbit. Let me see. And they're planning on setting it off, or causing this false flag with this kinetic device on November 2nd. All right. Again, if that's the case, if that's accurate, then kudos to Justin Deschamps, who's been on the show twice actually. He's been on the show twice for being a part of that mass meditation on November 2nd, okay, because every bit helps, right? And, of course, in the usual way, the cabal disclosed this attack through, for their black magic to work, through apparently an image, the eye chart, on the cover of The Economist towards the end of 2019. So the usual bullshit, in other words. So here's what has been happening under the surface. Self-described Satanist and human fetus eater Leo Zigami sent us the following message: China will invade Taiwan and trigger a third world war if Trump wins or if the elections are contested. All right, which I briefly touched on earlier on, that Cobra also spoke about. Yeah, obviously, as always, for the past 20 years, they're going to try. So first of all, nothing new there. Threats and attempts met by counter-threats and countermeasures has been going on for a very long time. But the bottom line is this. This is why we do mass meditations and also remote personal clearing on Gaia that many of us do, and grid work, physical grid work. By controlling the energies through these means, we control the timelines, because there's a timeline where XYZ happened. There's a timeline where in the same world, XYZ did not happen. That's the name of the game that I explained earlier on. We must play and master this game, because I can guarantee you they will be doing their rituals on Halloween, specifically to pull this off by November 2nd or even 4th. All right? Yeah. When it's put that way, it really hits home, doesn't it? That's why I've said in past interviews, see yourself as an operative, not as just a civilian doing feel-good mass meditations for peace and love and the usual stuff. It's an operation, a literal operation that you are a part of. And good on you. a lot of respect, esteem, and honour comes with that. Make no mistake about that. So, moving on to should we be worried about Trump, with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner visiting the grave of some high-level cabal member. I've forgotten his name already. Whatever. No is the answer to that. That's just more of Jared's bullshit. Okay, and I make no apologies for the language. The White Hats have always been onto him. He was obviously posted to Trump via his marriage to Ivanka. All right, it's a darkness posting. Many of you who've had dark partners to shut down your light know exactly what I mean. Although it does work in reverse as well. The typical example is a lot of Sisterhood of the Rose types get posted to dark men in power throughout history. Throughout history. I remember Attila the Hun, for example, back in 480 AD, whenever it was. No one could stop him. No one was able to stop him. In other words, no man and his army could stop him. It took a Sisterhood of the Rose to poison him on their first wedding day, and that's how he was stopped. Okay. And we can go on with other examples. Anyway, the thing to realise is I don't believe he'll fulfil his objectives, Jared. And it's important to remember that Trump has mastered the art of playing both sides. Although a better way to put it is playing various groups. Okay. And to that effect, I've gotten a concerned email from a 144K member. She's saying, thank you. I've been listening to Kim Possible's audio or video that you sent. Yet at the same time, and it's blown me away. This is awesome stuff. Yet at the same time, I find myself upset and confused about Trump, and not sure if he is deep state or just misguided. It seemed like he was getting rid of the deep state, but perhaps not. At least following Q has got me here and kept faith, helped me keep the faith. I understand Kim's frustration and exhaustion, as in Kim Possible, and she doesn't seem very hopeful. That's not quite the case. Kim's quite hopeful, and she is exhausted. Rest assured, she's getting excited as well. I am very confused about voting. I'm in a Democrat state, so in many ways it doesn't matter. Well, yes, it does matter, because energetically it matters, dear one. Can you shed any light on this tomorrow night? Thank you so much, meaning today on the show. The thing about the current US president is he's able to keep things close to his chest and strictly in his own mind in a very smart way, where he's able to play, both all the different groups, because it's not just a simple black and white case of the cabal and the white hats, and that's all there is. There's various groups that want more of this. There's, like not killing the entire population, but their version of the financial reset, for example. There's other groups on the white hat side that want complete, disclosure and release all the sophisticated knowledge right now, way off on the other end of the spectrum. He's spinning a few plates, and it's not easy. But he's, as Robert Davis Sewell said, he's a deal maker. He knows how to create the perception of going along to get along, but really he's doing something else. And a good example of that is when he was a developer in Manhattan, of all places. Believe me, there's no way known you're going to get a building approval to build anything or renovate anything if you haven't worked out a clever way to go along to get along with the Zionist mafia of Manhattan. And no, Zionist does not mean Jewish, by the way. Not in the slightest. Anyway. And yet having his own smart long-term goals. It's a complex situation. One thing that I disagree with, because it's not confirmed, when Kim Possible, what's her full proper name, Anne Grogan or something like that, when she said, a phone call to Trump was intercepted, and it was someone from some group, mostly a cabal group, saying, okay, it hasn't happened, it hasn't worked, we have to move to plan B, and Trump apparently said, okay, cool, let's do it. She assumed that, he's really with them, and the White House are only forcing him to do the right thing. Well, no, it doesn't prove that he's with the cabal or some cabal faction. It could just as easily mean that, okay, he's letting him going along to get along, letting him pretending he's going to work with them in the end or whatever, and just let them do their thing over there, while he has 9 times out of 10 very different ideas. That's more like the thing or the way that he operates. So, and I'm not necessarily saying he's undoubtedly, unmistakably, in diddly doodly, as Ned Flanders used to say, definite white hat. He's something more of an enigma, more of a mystery, and there's a good reason for that. And I have to leave that at that. Okay. All right. Let me see. Here we go. Discover the exciting news. Fulford's Pentagon sources are confirming if we Starseeds prevent anything bad from happening by showing up for the 144K anti-Halloween mass meditations. November 3rd mass meditation for a smooth and fair election, as far as we know at the moment anyway. And, of course, 11/11, that Cobra is called. Okay. To quote, meanwhile, our Pentagon sources inform us that, and this is verbatim from his Pentagon source, quote, with Amy Coney Barrett confirmed for the Supreme Court, Trump is poised to win a landslide with indictments of big names, mass arrests, and financial political reboot after the election. Yes, unquote. Yes, that will happen, folks, if we do our job. They can't do it all themselves. By fulfilling our part of that sacred trinity I described earlier. Really get that into your head. And really, that's the only way, that any false flag will not happen. As if, because, they will, if they, in the hypothetical that they successfully drop the timelines through the rituals on Halloween, then yes, there's a possibility of a successful false flag. But of course, the 144K will be there to warmly greet them with a lightning bolt to the chest. And I have to keep that at that as well. Okay. Now, not for the first time, Fulford doesn't really understand the situation here in the US. As an example, he goes on to say, quote, it doesn't appear that Trump and his supporters want to be involved in the global financial political reboot because they have failed to offer any solutions to the ongoing mass extinction, poverty, or other existential crises that he's got a typo there, that the planet faces. Trump has offered only an American-centric worldview and is telling the rest of the world to mind its own business. Okay. Perspective and context. when you're up to your neck in dealing with the cabal in your own backyard and on during an election campaign and appealing to the domestic citizenry, the base here in the US, fighting the cabal media, which is freaking nasty. Most of the public in the US, and with most of the public in the US still unaware of all the black ops technology, the SSP, and the stuff that we know, and also add to that, dealing with shutting down blatant election fraud as proven by Project Veritas. Check out those videos on YouTube. Yeah, you'll be sticking to the 3D stuff and focused on defeating the cabal in your own backyard and appealing, using the more conventional sort of appeals and, promises that presidents usually do during election. That still needs to be completed, this election cycle. And the surface cabal still needs to be cleaned out before you can start announcing that free energy exists, among other things. Financial, you need to drain the swamp first. One thing comes after the other. That's just how it is. So he thinks he has an understanding of the situation. He doesn't. Unless he's just keeping up the pressure on behalf of the public and saying to Trump and the White Hats, hey, this is what we're expecting, kind of thing. If that's his intent, then yeah, definitely. Good on him for saying that. But if he's being sort of literal with what he's saying there, then it's not really the full picture. Let's see. Okay, time to find out what the international military and intelligence unity looks like against cabal attempts to cull humanity based on an MI6 source. So to quote his MI6 source, it says, "We have seen evidence of deliberate mass murder, so that commutes the whole thing to Section 9 of the International Criminal Code. What this means is that we see this as an undeclared act of war. This means that there is a mandate for military intervention," the sources say. Quote, "Were I on the side of the perpetrator, meaning the cabal, I would be making a will at this stage," unquote. The source continued by saying many heads of state and government have been complicit in this whole crime against humanity, unquote. Now, that's most blatantly true with the state government of Victoria, with the ridiculous lockdown, where don't worry, for anyone, any all Starseeds living in Melbourne and Victoria for that matter, we haven't forgotten you, okay? We are with you with the struggle because it's really bad over there. It's ridiculous. Blatant martial law of a nasty kind. Anyway, needless to say, he goes on to say, the world's, oh, by the way, Victoria is one of the states of Australia, with Melbourne being the capital. Okay. Yes, that is where I'm from, at least as far as this incarnation is concerned. He goes on to say, needless to say, the world's military and intelligence community know that the entire COVID, quote, public health emergency came out when the 5G microwave network went online and they killed millions in China, unquote. Mass deaths in the rest of the world were prevented after the Japanese confirmed what the NSA warned us about, that 5G is a killer. Okay, so breaking that down, that shows that the NSA is under relatively firm and strict white hat control. Otherwise, the NSA wouldn't have warned us that 5G is a killer. The fact that 5G rollout was paused in most of the world has saved countless lives. Again, that's how you know the Earth Alliance has enough control to stop this sort of thing. And he continues, and the executives of the telecommunications firms involved are being systematically hunted down and killed, unquote. So, yeah, for the umpteenth time, it's happening. They're taking them out. And Pentagon sources confirm that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been killed by the cabal. Now, what was the Earth Alliance or White Hat response? Which is good news. Pentagon sources say they have already killed Samsung chairman Lee Kun-hee, quote, who appears to run South Korea, unquote. Now, this is a big deal because senior executives and CEOs of the biggest corporations, and a lot of corporations like Samsung chairman Lee Kun-hee, are literally cabal members. They're part of the network. And, you know, rest assured, you don't get to have the typical cabal Hegelian antithesis to, in this case, Apple's iPhone with such a market share unless you're a cabal member, all right? Unless you're part of the club. So theoretically, South Korea is more free. Not completely free, unlikely, but more free of cabal control. And that's obviously good news. The even better news is the Pentagon, with its special forces, can take out cabal members when needed, as needed. And, you know, in the current context of the Chimera not yet being completely finished off. Really big deal. Now, he says, you know, he's received word, Benjamin Fulford, he's received word that Israeli Prime Minister and mass murderer Benjamin Netanyahu has been taken out as well. Okay. The quote from that Pentagon source continues by saying, the death toll in Israel has now exceeded 2,300. Okay. Now, he's referring to the death toll of the cabal network there, cabal members there, not from COVID. Okay. Although publicly, the mainstream media in Israel may claim or say it's COVID. It's not. White House are taking them out. And it may well be true. 2,300 cabal members in Israel taken out. That you know, they're capable of that, so it could be true. But it goes on to say we've been unable to independently confirm this. So I'm just going to say, don't be surprised if it is true. You know. So, you know, further confirmation from independent, positive military sources about the underground bases of the Illuminati breakaway complex being ended, completely taken out. This is another quote of his Pentagon source, quote, many deep underground bases from down under to Europe, down under being Australia, from down under to Europe, Asia, and North America have been emptied of children, gold, diamonds, precious metals, treasures, and documents, and then destroyed as military forces mop up defeated cabal minions who don't even realize the war is over, unquote. All right. Again, really connects well with Cobra's report independently. So let's learn about a common sign on the surface within the US in particular that the White Hats are carrying out special ops against cabal assets continuously. All right. But again, it's not the full force or full out takeout as yet, although it is very significant to say the least. So there's apparently been widespread outages across the US with a heap of 911 calls reporting them, an unprecedented number of 911 calls. It's currently believed, pending confirmation, that the outages are caused by the White Hats that switch the electricity in an area off where there's a cabal asset of some kind, all right? And that they switch it off, the special forces move in, clear it, put the bad guys away or take them out, and bring the electricity back on. And, of course, Kim Possible herself a couple of weeks ago said, yeah, they've been taking out cabal members even in big meetings, and you quite often, to do these operations successfully, you quite often have to take out the electricity, a building that cabal members are in, so that, the alarm system doesn't work and communications don't work and so forth. So he finishes off by saying, we also note, quote, we also note power is being cut off to over 1 million people in areas of California where big tech companies like Google and Facebook are located. These cutoffs of electricity happened after the Justice Department formally sued Google over monolithic practices. All right, and there's a link there to foxbusiness.com. And, up to 1 million have been cut off from electricity. Now, we all know California is one of the main, infested cabal areas of even the entire world. I mean, it's almost as bad as Switzerland and Italy for crying out loud. Yeah, needless to say, lots going on. There's also been talk of, Chinese invasion through Walmarts that are apparently closed for quote-unquote plumbing, but really they're building underground facilities. Given the situation, I'm not too concerned about it. But again, that's not to imply to be complacent, all right? You and I, Starseeds, 144K members, it's our job to be the operatives that we truly are and treat this as an operation with the same level of professionalism that any agent does, that they do in the military, and act accordingly. By doing that, you're honouring and respecting yourself and who you are. And it helps bring your higher self closer to you, more into you, as a nice little perk. Okay, so, folks, you have been briefed. Prepare yourself for Saturday, the first meditation. All the details are in the email and on the blog at returntoyourtruth.com. There's one in the morning. Let me see if I can bring up the damn times. I don't have it in front of me. Let me see here. Just to finish off, the next mass meditation is at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. There's a link to your time zone there. The full blue moon maximum, or Hunter's moon, whatever the heck it's called now, is at 10:49 a.m. Eastern. Okay. So 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Be ready. The second one, which could be the grand crescendo of all energetic events for 2020 and forever after, really, other than the event itself or the final, last, main galactic flash. That's 9 p.m. Eastern. The links to your time zone and access to the live broadcast are in the blog and the email. And B, the loving, devoted, committed operative and agent of the light that you always were, and fight for your freedom. The ball's in your court. You decide. And now it's that simple. Use the support and resources that are there for you. Be pragmatic. And follow your heart as always. This is your loving servant, the Unknown Light Warrior. Here, you've been listening to Ground Crew Command Radio. See you all Saturday, folks. Let's make it happen.